Joined now by WWE Hall of Famer, author of the new book, Slobber Knocker, My Life in Wrestling, good old JR, Jim Ross. Jim, pleasure to talk to you. You've been a part of wrestling for 40 plus years. Why write the book now?
Well, I had the time from not being on the road 51 weeks a year. You know, when you're doing live TV with no net for a couple of decades or so, you find little time to do anything but work and travel. And travel's no fun, so I finally got off the road full time, thought, well, I got to figure out some projects to do. Book was one of them, audio, podcast was one-man show was one, and all those things I like doing, Robin. So it's fun stuff for me. So the book, it seemed like my book would have, I thought in the beginning my book would be very unusual for a wrestling book. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's not a wrestling book. It's a book about a fat kid from Eastern Oklahoma who, along the way, got the itch to be a broadcaster because he listened to Harry Carey and Jack Buck on his transistor radio out of KMOX in St. Louis. But somehow I got sidetracked into the wacky world of wrestling when all I wanted to do was call football games. I thought that 3-month gig would be kind of cool. Had stories to tell when I go back to college, and it lasted 40 years. So it's been a cool thing, good, cool run for me. It combined showbiz and athleticism and being around athletes. That's what I found probably most delightful is those relationships.
Diverting to football real quick, you're famous for being an Oklahoma fan.
Oh, hell yeah. Baker's a good kid. You know, I got into a little issue with a writer, actually a broadcast guy, that was really knocking Baker because of his off-the-field situations. That one thing in Arkansas, and then his buddies, you know, they made a road trip, guy's road trip. You ever been on a guy's road trip?
I have been on a guy's road trip.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I have drank too much on those road trips. But Baker's a good kid. I know his mom and dad, and if he was all JR, is just a jock sniffer. He loves those Oklahoma guys. I do love them. But man, he's a genuine article. What a leader. I did Falcon football when Brett Favre was a rookie, but Brett Favre had this intangible quality that made people want to be around him. They liked him. He was funny, spontaneous, one of the boys, and that's exactly Baker Mayfield. He's that kind of guy. Even the D linemen and the DBs like him.
Who in the pro wrestling business has that?
Oh, well, Ric Flair was kind of the curious director for many years, and was far the most social guy. Mm-hmm. People loved to be around Nate because he always had fun. He ate at good restaurants and partied at nice places. I would say the potentate of the locker room for the last several years, and I called him the conscience of the WWE for that reason, was The Undertaker. If we had wrestlers' court, little kangaroo court things, he was always the judge. And nobody ever wanted to appeal his decisions. They never did, out of respect. So that's the kind of guy Baker is. He's a cool cat, and he's going to make somebody a really good quarterback, I think, at the next level.
Now, Ric Flair obviously had the 30 for 30 about him recently. People have been celebrating his career. He put up an Instagram post with his Mount Rushmore. It was Flair, Hogan, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. If you had to put those guys in order, how would you do it?
Oh, man. Well, the issue is, if you put it in longevity, use longevity as a primary source for ranking, you'd either have to have Hogan and Flair 1 and 2 because they did it longer. You know, Flair, Hogan 1, and Rock and Austin 3 or 4, just because of the tenure, the short terms. That's like saying Jim Brown is always the greatest running back in the history of the National Football League, but he played 9 years. So some people discount that. I don't. Some do. Jim Brown only played 9 years. But he was really good all 9 years of that time.
Yeah, I mean, the prime of The Rock and Austin, that was the coolest thing in high school. Obviously, The Rock's gone on and done some things with his career since then. Who would you say is the best wrestler in the world currently?
AJ Styles. WWE's got him signed up. Good kid. Georgia boy. He has the ability to make anyone he wrestles, better than they actually are. And that's the great thing about being a performer. He can bring the best out in his dancing partners. And he does some sensational things that others don't replicate, but he does them in a cadence that is comfortable and logical.
Would you say that's kind of similar to maybe like Shawn Michaels in his prime?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. Mayfield, I called Mayfield on the radio the day the Shawn Michaels of college football, the heartbreak kid or something. He's the heartbreak kid for people that have to play him because he never lost a road game, true road game, never. But yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, he's that's a good. I think that's a good right there, spot on right there.
Now, we've talked a little bit about adapting. The way you storytell has had to adapt as well. What's the difference in communicating with the wrestling fan now, and how have you adapted your style and how you communicate a story?
Maybe to my downfall, I haven't changed a lot. Some things you change because you can only paint the picture of what the audience is seeing on their monitor. So if what you put on the monitor for me to call is good music, in other words, good stuff, then I should be able to plug into that emotionally and tell you, the viewer, a very believable, organically constructed storyline. The wrestlers make the music, and the commentators provide the lyrics. It's always that way, and the music always comes first. So, and so guys like Lawler and I worked together so many years, the King, and then Paul Heyman, a great partner, a lot of other great partners, but those two are at the top of the list, obviously. We played off what the music, we heard the music in this analogy. And from hearing that music, we decided this is the lyric that's going to make it work.
What match provided the best music for you to give the lyrics to?
Well, man, that's a hard one. The match that's most memorable for me is the 1998 Hell in a Cell. It'll be 20 years this next year, anniversary, that Mick Foley's, even going on the road to celebrate it with his tour, of The Undertaker and Foley's Hell in a Cell match, and Foley getting tossed off right beside us from the top of the cell down through the table. And the table was not there wasn't a padding landing area. There was no landing zone. It was the wood through, exploded, and what stopped his fall was the ice on the igloo floor in Pittsburgh, the old Civic Arena. So I just thought everything you heard from me was real because I thought he actually was dead. I didn't say how a human being could survive that. And why do we, I was almost thinking in my head, why do we do this? What are we doing here? Why do we sanction this, type thing? So somebody says, Mick wants me to throw him off the cell, for example. Well, how can you stop? No, we're not doing that. But they did, and for history, it's always going to be there. And thank God he survived it. But I was as shocked as anybody because I didn't know the outcome. I knew The Undertaker was not going to lose a cell match. Duh, come on. I didn't know how I knew the destination. I didn't know how the route. And that's what makes the commentary for me that much fun. I'm not preconditioned.
Now, that match, extremely memorable. I mean, it might be the one that stands out for me as well as like the most shocking thing I ever saw. Do you think that was good or bad for wrestling long term? Because it sort of did make it so people were trying to meet that standard. I mean, you see Shane McMahon coming off cages now.
I'm of the belief that the Hell in a Cell from Foley, that amazing thing, should have been a one-off, never to be duplicated, replicated, or attempted again. You can't do that and not with a high level of risk. So now you got to weigh it, what's the risk and the reward, and sometimes it doesn't jive. So I don't think that the wrestlers have to go to that extreme. I think if they do go to that extreme or something resembling that they maybe have some questions in their game, that they question their own ability to tell a vibrant story that I embrace without having to go to the flying Walendas and death-defying tricks. It should be more about the match and the personalities, why we're wrestling, the strategy of the match, not the isolated big moves. And there's a lot of isolated big move wrestling right now that I think sometimes affects the emotional attachment to the wrestler.
It's one of the things you touch on in the book. Another thing, speaking about like sort of questioning confidence, you talk about your return. You had suffered from Bell's palsy at WrestleMania 15, and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. What was it, because you had some self-doubts, that allowed you to get out there and sort of get your career going back and call that legendary match at the time?
That day, Austin and Rock, two guys I signed, and two friends, since then become great friends, they were having their first main event at WrestleMania together. And they had 3, 15, 17, and 19, ironically enough. And I got to call all of them. Just very proud of that fact. But they had, mentioned to Vince that boy, it'd be cool if JR could come back and call us one match, get the crowd buzzing a little bit. We'd like to have his call on it. So Vince said, about a week before WrestleMania, he said, be sure and take your tux to WrestleMania. I'm going to put your ass back to work. So I was ready, I thought, until I got there. Then I started having stage fright. I never had that. Had a panic attack, never had one of those. And so when I used to see the old Sopranos series and Tony would have those panic attacks, I get it. I was there. You can't get your breath. You think you're dying. So I said, well, I'll just go tell Vince I can't do it. The cold could stay out there. So I just, I can't do this. So when I got done that night, and I had to hold my face up to talk, and it was horrible with the Bell's palsy and the paralysis, I said, I think I can do this. But I don't know if the television business will allow someone that looks and sounds like me to get back on television. So that was remained to be seen. And then when I write my second book, we'll pick up right after my indecisions and how was I going to get through that and get back in the game on a full-time basis, which eventually happened. And I ended up being in a Hall of Fame and having a great career. So it's been kind of a fairy tale deal, to be honest with you.
You've mentioned Vince a few times. Is he everything everybody thinks he is?
Well, as a performer, I'll tell you this. Anybody that followed our product in the pivotal years of the Attitude Era, from going from a privately held, family-owned company that was having some financial struggles in the mid-'90s to creating an atmosphere and a brand and a rebrand that was based on some great talents. Talents win the games. Ask the Giants. Everybody win, right? I think that, I don't know. I just, the general attitude of Vince on camera is misinterpreted to people to believe he's always like that. He doesn't walk down the office like this.
Yeah.
He don't do that. But he was such a good heel. He was so natural at it. He was everything that talent should be, a natural extension of your own personality, amplified and embellished a bit. But the core is you. Because then when you give me this big promo and you're trying to sell me on something, I don't feel like I'm getting zoomed. But he was the best. He was the best heel because he was the perfect villain to oppose Stone Cold. And as long as Stone Cold could keep having roadblocks and challenges and mismatches and all these things, and Mr. McMahon was manipulating his system to make life miserable for Austin, it was a perfect marriage. Marriage made in heaven and hell to a large degree. But Vince has been amazing to me. When my wife was killed, he was right there front and center within hours saying, whatever you need. And, I just needed some peace at that moment to try to get through it. But
of course.
He was he's been a rock there. But so much is made out of the fact, the other announcers will get out and say, well, he was hard on us in the headset and he was aggressive. He's aggressive on game day, no doubt. He's passionate. And I think sometimes guys mistook his passion for being his wrath. And sometimes his passion was something he wanted you to latch onto and feel what I'm feeling. And I generally could match that. I was there with him, but some guys weren't. But I found he's a great leader in a very crazy business. And to think a guy that wasn't even supposed to be in the business like him, his father, his family didn't want him in the business like him, could take a business out of the smoky arenas and, VFW halls and wear all these other things, obviously. And of course, they did play the Garden, but it wasn't a Garden every night in that territory. So, and to make it global is phenomenal. He may be the greatest promoter in history of anything. I can't think, better than Barnum. He was supposed to be the yard marker, right?
Yeah, they just closed Ringling Brothers, right? And WWE's still rolling on.
So the circus is still touring.
And when we talk about this theme of adaptation, that's something that business had to do. And I've heard tales of the road where, a heel and a face couldn't be seen together. And maybe it was around the Attitude Era. I'm not sure exactly when the curtain was pulled back a little bit. And I think fans really appreciated that. When do you think that happened, and why do you think that happened?
Well, I think a lot of things factored into it. One, social media and information flow, camera phones, digital access, distribution. We all got our own distribution network. I can have a network. I can do my own video. I can have my own channel. So could anybody else out there. So the internet was one big issue because of the information flow. The reality of who these performers are became more exposed. They were being seen at airports, at a restaurant, or at a gym, or taking their kid to school, and all the pictures started circulating. So it became more real, and fans seemed to be sometimes more interested in the real person than the TV character. So my theory has always been the real person should be the TV character, the foundation. You add to it, showbiz additions. But I think when the DX guys, we're getting ready to go to WCW and have their farewell at the Garden here in New York City, that kind of really revealed, whoa, these guys are really friends. They've fought each other. They've been tag partners. I don't know what their role is right now, but they seem to have been buddies, and we know that a couple of them are leaving. And I think that really awakened that. And it also let us write better television. All pro wrestling is a reality show. It should be mindless entertainment, and my peers and my comrades probably think, what did JR say that for? But really, I mean, it's about as mindless entertainment as watching some of the political shows today. You watch it, what did I learn? Nothing. So mindless television should be entertaining that you can take or leave, and when you get through watching it, you should be able to forget about it. Now we know there's a lot of fans that don't operate that way. They live it 24/7. So but the internet's changed that a lot, and I think the fact that people want to know more about the people they see on television.
Now, speaking of knowing more, obviously people will know a lot more about you after reading your book. Again, it's Slobber Knocker, My Life in Wrestling. What's one message you want people to take away from it?
Several quick one-liners. My granny used to say when I was a little kid, she would say, Jimmy, that was before JR was born in a hat, Jimmy, what do you want to do when you grow up? I got that a lot, right? Only child, so I got a lot of attention. And I tell Granny, well, I want to be the voice of the St. Louis Cardinals, because I was hooked on Jack Buck and Harry Carey, two of the best radio guys ever. And I loved it. So there was my babysitter at night sometimes, being an only child. You listen to transistor radio and listen to ball game. So she said, well, somebody's going to do it. Why not you? And then the line about my dad said about, quitting's the easiest thing in the world to get good at. But the bottom line of this book is I overachieved my tail off forever. Looking at me, and people can say, well, JR's been around a long time. But, a guy that looks like me now, that sounds like me, that can't smile, probably won't get an audition, to be honest with you. And so if I had known that then, I would have quit. I refuse to let others define me. I think that's a big part of this book. Do not allow others to define you. Persistence, perseverance is essential to surviving life. And if you turn your jersey in, you get out of the game, you're done. So, and finally, I'd probably say, when old JR kicks the bucket, it ain't gonna be because he's rusty. I'm working.